Let us quickly create this login form in React.js. Basically, it has a username, a password, a Remember Me checkbox, and a login button with this animation on hover. For new users, they get this option to register, and if you forgot your password, you are redirected using this link. We will be doing this in React.js. We will be using this image as the background, so be sure to grab it if you wish to follow along. Create a new folder. I'm calling it Login Form. Open it in your favorite editor, mine being Visual Studio Code. To create the project, first head over to Terminal, then New Terminal. Let me enlarge this so that it's clear enough. React projects require Node.js and NPM to manage dependencies and run scripts. If you haven't installed Node, you can download and install it from the official website. I also have this short, dedicated video on how to install it, which I recommend you watching it first. Simply run npx create react app login form in your terminal to set up a new React project named login form. This command will create all the necessary files and folders to get you started building your login form. Please note that this process will take some time, therefore I will fast forward the video to the end of the process. Perfect. In case you ran into some error, check out this video where I give a solution to one of the many errors you might run into. If you are good with no errors, smash that like button and let's continue. First, change the directory to login form. Sorry, I started the development server before changing the directory. Let's correct that. Then start the development server. Typically, this script launches a development server that serves the React application, allowing you to view it in a web browser and make changes to the code in real time. Before we officially get started, let me set up the development server next to the VS Code so we can easily see any changes we make. I will first hide this panel. In the src folder, we have the app.css file. In here, we will write the CSS styles for our components. We also have this app.js file. It is the main component of our application, and it's where we will be defining our login form component. In short, to create this simple login form, we will only use these two files. First up, we will get rid of the default components. We will have a div element with the class name wrapper, which acts as a container for our form elements. And as you may have guessed, we don't need any of these styles. One more thing. In the public folder, inside the HTML file, we will change the title of the form. We will leave everything else in default, since today's focus is mainly on the form. Back into the app.js file, we will start with a form element. The empty action attribute means that the form will submit data to the current URL. Inside the form element, we have an h1 element with the text login, representing the heading of our form. Following the heading, we will have an input element wrapped in a div with the class name input_box. It will have a placeholder, username, which will be required. Duplicate this div, and for the second input box, change the type to password and placeholder to password. After the input elements, we'll have a div element with the class name forgot. We will add a label inside it, which will state Remember Me. Before the Remember Me, we need an input of type checkbox. After the checkbox, we will add a link with a placeholder value. Its text set to Forgot Password. Next up, create a button with class BTN. Text inside it, log in. Add another div with class sign-up link. This one will have a paragraph, which will state, "Don't have an account." After it, add a link, stating, "Register now." Now that we've established the form's structure, let's begin applying styles to it. For all elements in the document, we set the margin and padding to 0, ensuring a consistent spacing throughout the document. Box sizing to border box, ensuring that elements are sized consistently. And for the font family, we're using the Railway font with a fallback to the default sans serif font. For the entire body, the display property is set to Flex, which turns the body into a Flex container. This allows its direct children to become Flex items. The Justify content property is set to Center, horizontally aligning the Flex items within the body, ensuring they are centered along the main axis. The Align items property is also set to Center, vertically aligning the Flex items within the body, ensuring they are centered along the cross axis. The Minimum Height property is set to 100 VH, ensuring that the body element occupies at least the entire height of the viewport, creating a layout that is centered both horizontally and vertically on the screen. We need a background image for the form. In the description, you will find this image. Copy it, open the project folder, and find the SRC folder. Paste the copied image here. Back in our code, we will add a background and set it to the image we just copied, named bged.jpg. The background size property is set to Cover, which ensures that the background image covers the entire background of the body element while maintaining its aspect ratio. The background position property is set to Center, which centers the background image horizontally and vertically. Next up, let's style this wrapper. Set its width to 420 pixels, background transparent. Add a border of 1 pixel solid, which is red for now. Add a backdrop filter of a blur of 9 pixels, giving it a nice blurred effect. Next up, we'll set the text color to white. This will ensure that any text inside our wrapper stands out nicely against the background. Now let's add some padding to give our content some breathing room. We'll add 30 pixels of padding on the top and bottom, and 40 pixels on the left and right. Lastly, let's give our wrapper some rounded corners. We'll set the border radius to 12 pixels, giving it a smooth and modern look. One last style for the wrapper, the border. We'll use a semi-transparent white color for the border just to give it a subtle touch. By using RGBA values, we can specify the color as a combination of red, green, and blue, along with an alpha value for transparency. In this case, we're using RGBA 255, 255, 255, which represents white with full opacity and a transparency of 20%. The border will have a subtle white color with a slight transparency, blending nicely with the background while still providing a visible border. Next, let's style our heading. We'll set the font size to 36 pixels and the text alignment to center. Now, let's style our input boxes. We'll start by giving them a relative positioning, which allows us to position any absolutely positioned elements within them relative to their own boundaries. We'll set the width to 100% to ensure that our input boxes span the full width of their containers. For the height, we'll set it to 50 pixels to provide enough space for users to input text comfortably. Lastly, we'll add some margin to create some space between each input box, both above and below them. Next, the input fields inside our input boxes. We'll set the width and height to 100% to ensure they fill their parent container completely. We'll add some border radius to give them rounded corners, creating a modern and visually appealing look. To maintain consistency with the design, we'll set the background to transparent, allowing any background styles applied to the input box itself to show through. We will include the border we used for the wrapper to maintain consistency. We'll remove the default outline that appears around the input fields when they're focused, as it's often unnecessary and can disrupt the design. For readability, we'll increase the font size to 17 pixels and set the text color to white, ensuring the text stands out against the background. Lastly, we'll add some padding to the input fields to provide spacing between the text and the edges of the input fields, ensuring a comfortable typing experience for users. Let's now customize the appearance of the placeholder text inside our input fields to ensure it matches the overall design of our form. We'll target the placeholder pseudo element within our input boxes. By setting the color property to white, we ensure that the placeholder text appears in white color, maintaining consistency with the text color of our input fields. Next, let's style this Forgot section. We'll start by setting the display property to Flex. Next, we'll use Justify Content to space the elements evenly within the Forgot section, ensuring they are nicely aligned and spaced out. To ensure the text is appropriately sized, we'll set the font size to 14.5 pixels, making it smaller than the main text but still legible. Lastly, we'll add some margin to adjust the spacing around the section. Now, let's style the anchor element within our Forgot section, which is typically used for the Forgot Password link. We'll start by removing the default underline from the link text using the text decoration property set to None. Next, we'll set the color of the link text to white, ensuring it matches the overall color scheme of our form and is easily visible against the background. To create a smooth transition effect when hovering over the link, we'll use the transition property. Here, we're specifying a transition duration of 0.4 seconds with an ease-in-out timing function. This results in a subtle and elegant animation when the link is hovered over. Now let's add a hover effect to our anchor link. We'll use the hover pseudo class to target the link when it's being hovered over. For the hover effect, we'll simply set the text decoration property to underline, which adds a line beneath the text when the link is hovered over. This change indicates to users that the link is interactive and can be clicked, improving the overall usability of our form. Moving on, let's style this checkbox. First, we'll add some margin to the right of the checkbox to create spacing between it and the adjacent text. In this case, we're adding 8 pixels of margin on the right side. Next, we'll use the accent color property to specify the color of the checkbox itself. By setting it to white, we ensure that the checkbox appears with a white color, matching the overall color scheme of our form. Now let's style our button element. Start by setting the width to 100% to ensure that our button spans the entire width of the container. Next, we'll set the height to 45 pixels. We'll remove the default border and outline using border, none, and outline, none. For the background color, we'll set it to white. To give our button rounded corners, we'll use border radius and set it to 40 pixels. We'll also set the cursor property to pointer to indicate to users that the button is clickable and interactive. For the text color, we'll set it to black to ensure it stands out against the white background. Lastly, we'll increase the font weight to 600 to make the button text bold and easily readable. Let's add a hover effect to our button to make it more interactive and engaging for users. When users hover over the button, we want to create a pulsating animation effect to draw attention to it. We'll use the hover pseudo class to target the button when it's being hovered over. For the hover effect, we'll apply an animation called pulse that lasts for 1 second and repeats infinitely. The pulse animation is defined using 8 keyframes, which specifies the keyframes of the animation at different points in time. At 0% keyframe, the button starts with its original size, scale 1. At 50% keyframe, the button scales up slightly, scale 1.05, creating a subtle expansion effect. At 100% keyframe, the button returns to its original size, scale 1. Together, these keyframes create a pulsating effect that adds a dynamic element to our button when hovered over. Moving on, let's style this Sign Up link section of our form, typically used for prompting users to register for an account if they don't have one. We'll start by setting the font size to 14.5 pixels to ensure the text is appropriately sized and consistent with the rest of the form. Next, we'll align the text in the center of the container using the Text Align property. This ensures that the text is neatly centered within its parent element. We'll add a margin to the top and bottom. In this case, we're adding 20 pixels of margin above the section and 15 pixels of margin below it, creating a balanced appearance. Lastly, let's style the anchor element within the Sign Up link section. We'll set the color of the link text to white to ensure it matches the overall color scheme of our form. Next, we'll remove the default underline from the link text using the text decoration property set to none. To emphasize the link, we'll increase its font weight to 600, making it slightly bolder and more prominent. And finally, let's add a hover effect to the anchor element. We'll use the hover pseudo class to target the link when it's being hovered over. For the hover effect, we'll simply set the text decoration property to underline, which adds a line beneath the text when the link is hovered over. This change indicates to users that the link is interactive and can be clicked, improving the overall usability of our form. Thank you for joining us today. If you have any questions, ideas, or inquiries, please feel free to share them in the comments section below. If you enjoyed this video, we appreciate your support by giving it a thumbs up. See you on the next one.